Tom, could you give her one of each sheet, please? I'm on the ball this week. Did you get a handout, Mrs. Polcheski? She did. Okay. Tom's on the ball. Okay. Okay. Got so many handouts here. Okay. So I'm going back to the introduction. My wife says, you need handouts, you need handouts. So I am going to, it's going to be a test on this. So no, gave you notes. So I'm just going to go through real quickly and give you the answers to the blank for the last chapter there. So if it should say, there's two of them, it should say introduction. If you have the sheet that said introduction, does anybody need a pen? Anybody need a pen? Okay. Got one, good. Okay, so we talked about this. The most consequential questions in life flow from the subject of God. These are so important. First one's origin. Where did we come from? Origin. Number 2 is identity. Who are we?
What's the first one?
Origin. Where did we come from? Really determines everything. Identity, who are we? Number 3 is meaning. Meaning, why are we here? Meaning, yep. Yep. Meaning, why are we here? Morality, how should we live? Big question of the day. Morality, everything is affected by this question. How do we live? What laws do we have? Morality, and then destiny, where are we going? Where are we going? So 5 consequential questions. It amazes me people have not thought about these things. You ask them and I'm like, this is like your... Okay, do your best and maybe my wife can give you the blanks answers later. She'll fill it in for you. So I'm just flipping through here. Just defining terms. A theist is someone who believes in a personal God who created the universe but is not part of the universe. So the first one is theist, D-H-T-H-E-I-S-T, theist. The other worldview is a pantheist. Just to add pan to that. Someone who believes in an impersonal God that literally is the universe. So rather than making the painting, pantheists believe God is the painting. Pantheist is the second one. And the last one is an atheist. Someone who does not believe in any type of God. An atheist. So a quick way to remember this. Is everybody ready? Atheist, God made all. Atheist, God made all. What? Theism, I'm sorry, I have it wrong on my... Theism, God made all, sorry. Pantheism, God is all. God is all. And atheism is no God at all. So made, is, and all on those blanks. Okay, so the next one, while religion certainly requires faith, religion is not only about faith. Only. Facts are also central to all religions because all religious worldviews, including atheism, make truth. And many of those truth claims can be evaluated through scientific and historical investigation. Here's important facts. We can study it. We can look at evidence. So only and facts are the blanks there. The next one is science and religion are not mutually exclusive categories, as some have suggested. This is the big lie they're trying to push. You can't be a scientist if you believe in religion. I don't know if anybody... Who did Ken Ham debate? Remember that big debate? He debated an evolutionist. Anybody remember that? Bill Nye, very good. And Bill Nye, remember that? Bill Nye made the assertion, you can't be a scientist if you believe in God? I'm surprised Ken Ham didn't nail him on that. There are Newton and all these great scientists. There's a whole list of, I went through that a while ago in that book, but some of the greatest scientists who ever lived were devout Christians. Even after atheism came along, even after evolution came along, they're like, we don't believe this. This is ridiculous. And basically they said, the more I study science, the more it gives me a faith in God. The more complex I see things are, the more I realize it's designed. Okay, you look at a car and you're like, oh, well, that, you know, we wouldn't believe a car could happen by accident. But the more you study and all these parts and how crafted they are, how well made they are, and they're designed and engineered, it's like the more you know, the more you realize this couldn't have happened by accident. So that was just a ridiculous thing that they believe, and they're pushing you. You're either religious or you're science. You're either faith or facts. That is so wrong. Science and religion are not mutually exclusive categories, as some have suggested. The validity of many religious beliefs can be checked out. They have claims, and there's no way, they're just making stuff up. A lot of their stuff is just made up. You know, we'll get into it, but it's like, how did they go from monkeys to birds and flying? Well, you know, they could have, you know, got a flap of skin, and the flap of skin, you know, like, it's just like, you don't have any evidence of that. You're just making it up, and then they just start jumping out with flaps of skin, and then they turn, you know, like, they're just making up stories that they have no evidence, they have no intermediate fossil records. They're just making up stuff and calling it science. If I put a lab coat on and I make up a story that what could have happened, we're going to look at some of that stuff, you know, what's possible, what's probable, but they're just making up stories and saying it's science. And so that's a big lie. Problems with Christianity, some people have, just understand. Many are perceived intellectual objections. We mentioned them, I won't go through them all. The problem of evil, objections of scientists, you know, a lot of people, you know, have these objections, so they're intellectual objections. Second is our emotional obstacles, sometimes obstruct the acceptance of Christianity. They don't like the doctrine of hell, hypocrisy of Christians. Some people, it's really, they've got to give up their whole way of life. It is a whole. If you're a Muslim, if you're somebody of different, it's not just a religion, it's their culture, it's their life, and that acceptance could bring persecution, could bring death. So it's not just, well, do you believe or not? You know, there's a lot involved in taking that step. There are handouts back there if you want, 2 handouts. Mrs. Palczewski has all the answers there. Finally, there are volitional, that's a matter of the will. Reasons to reject Christianity, namely Christian morality. They know it's true, but if I do this, I have to give up, you know, my partying and my way of life and how my lifestyle, and I don't want to be restricted in our choices in life. So intellectual, emotional, volitional reasons. So it's not, you can give people all the evidence and they just choose to not believe it. There's a choice. Every religious worldview requires faith, even the worldview that says there is no God. Okay, understand that. They have faith. They have, like, the title of the book. I don't have enough faith to be in evolution. We're going to look at all the evidence. Requires more faith to be an atheist. Next one is, the less evidence you have for your position, the more faith you need to believe it, and vice versa. Faith covers a gap in knowledge. The less evidence you have for your position, the more faith you need. Well, I've got great faith. Well, don't let that be because you don't know anything and you're ignorant. You know, that's not a badge of honor, okay? It's good to have faith, but it's also good to study and look at the evidence and know why we believe what we believe. There is empirical, forensic, philosophical evidence strongly supports conclusions consistent with Christianity and inconsistent with atheism. So evidence and atheism there. So we're going to look at the evidence and see which conclusion it supports. The main point for now is that you see what we mean when we say that every worldview, is a blank there, including atheism, requires some degree of faith. I'll get into this a little bit more, but I was like, how do they get past that the Big Bang defies laws of science? So we're all about science, we believe in this theory that defies all the laws of science. And I read an article, it was like 3 or 4 they listed, and then they just said, well, we believe that those laws didn't exist before the Big Bang. I'm like, well, that's convenient, okay? The people of science said, well, science just didn't matter then, and then all of a sudden science came into existence by itself. So their worldview requires faith. They don't know that. They don't know the laws didn't exist before the universe. They can't explain it. They have faith. Even skeptics have faith. They have faith that skepticism is true. Likewise, agnostics have faith that agnosticism is true. Philip Johnson aptly put it, one who claims to be a skeptic of one set of beliefs is actually a true believer in another set of beliefs. Okay, they'll say, well, Christians are dogmatic in their beliefs. They can be some of the most dogmatic people. If you've ever met somebody who's I had a teacher I mentioned, a rabid evolutionist, and he was just like, you know, his mind was set and he was going to force it down on everybody. He was very dogmatic. And they're going to say, oh, Christians are dogmatic. Well, so are they. In other words, atheists are naturally skeptical of Christianity, turn out to be true believers in atheism. They believe in something. They have faith. They are true believers. They're dogmatic about their beliefs. Christians are not supposed to just have faith. Christians are commanded to know what they believe and why they believe it. The blank is just have faith. You know, we're supposed to have faith, you know, but it doesn't have to be just a purely blind faith. Okay, if somebody asks you, why do you believe God? Hopefully we have reasons. My pastor told me or my parents told me is not going to get people go very far with people, right? If you can give reasons, well, these are the evidence, this is what leads me to this conclusion, you know, and it's the Holy Spirit. We're not discounting the Holy Spirit and saying it's just all reason, you know. There's faith involved, but like I said, don't let it be because we don't have reasons or evidence. We haven't studied it. Christians don't get any brownie points for being stupid. Okay, that's a free one. All right, don't let your ignorance be a badge of honor. Okay, we should be educated. We should know these things. And lastly, there's a difference between proving a proposition and accepting a proposition. I might be able to prove Christianity is true beyond reasonable doubt, but only you can choose to accept it. The difference between proving a proposition and accepting a proposition. Might be able to prove Christianity is true beyond a reasonable doubt. Can I prove 100% that God exists? No. Can they prove 100% God doesn't exist? Absolutely not. Okay, but beyond a reasonable doubt, we can look at it and be convinced that there is a God. So we're going to look at, can we handle the truth? The next one there. A quote from Winston Churchill, one of my favorite world leaders, leader of Britain during World War II. He said, men stumble over the truth from time to time, but most pick themselves up and hurry off as if nothing happened. We demand, the first blank is truth in virtually every areas of our life. We demand truth from loved ones. No one wants a spouse or a child to be dishonest, right? My wife lied to me the other day. I caught her. We were getting ready for church, and she says this, so what are we planning to do for the football game on Monday night? I said, it's not Monday night. What are you talking about? You know, and she's like, yeah, it's Monday night. And if I would have believed her, I would have totally missed the game and turned on Monday night like, where's the game? It was Sunday at 1 o'clock. And lucky I had looked it up before and I knew she was lying. And I'm like, no, that's not true. I almost missed the game. I actually wish I would have maybe missed the game. I ended up turning it off halfway through. It was so frustrating against the Texans. And then she's like, oh, they're back in it. Turn it back on again. And I turned it back on and I shouldn't have done that, and they lost, and it was heartbreaking. So it probably would have been good that I missed it. Then the next Sunday, we're driving to church. She goes, oh, there's a game on Monday. And I didn't know what time the game was, but I didn't believe her. I'm like, I want to see it on the phone, on the schedule here that you're telling. I'm like, I can't trust you anymore. I'm like, what a coincidence. 2 Monday night games. And it actually was Monday night. She was right that time, but, you know, a little doubt crept in there. We want truth from our family. We want truth from doctors. We want them to tell us the truth when something's wrong. We want them to give the right prescription, the right operations. Okay, we don't want them. Imagine if your doctor lied to you and told you the wrong thing. We want truth. Courts. We want them to convict only the truly guilty. We want truth. Airlines, we demand truly safe planes and truly sober pilots. Thank you, Boeing. You know, you're a little scary when the doors start falling off in mid-flight. You know, you get a little worried. You know, who put this together? You know, can this pilot fly? All the DEI stuff. They don't want the most qualified. They want you for your sex or your skin color. I'm like, please give me the most qualified person you have. I don't care what they are, but I want the most qualified. My life depends on this. But we want truth. We expect to be told the truth when we pick up a reference book, read an article, or watch a news story. Actually, we don't get much truth, and I hope you realize how dishonest it is. You know, it is. You're not going to get much truth from CNN. Okay, some of these news stations are very deceptive. I don't know if you watched. They did an interview, and some person, Democrat person, gave an answer, and it was so bad they had to cut it up and edit it and put it out. Oh, this is their answer, you know. And they can deceptively edit stuff. And somebody gave the full version, came out, and it was nothing like the version they put up there. So they can be dishonest, and we have to be careful what we trust. We want the truth from advertisers, teachers, politicians. We assume road signs, medicine bottles, food labels reveal the truth. Aren't we going to be upset if that food has something in it that's not on the label and we didn't know about it and it's hurting us? Okay, there's going to be lawsuits. We want truth from almost every facet of life that affects our money, relationships, safety, or health. Despite our unwavering demands for truth in those areas, many people are not interested in truth when it comes to morality or religion. Okay, we want truth in every area, but when it comes to religion, well, there's no truth. We can't really know the truth. What's truth, you know? There are no absolutes. And many people reject the idea that any religion can be true. So the blank there is religion. It's a huge contradiction. Why do we demand truth in everything but morality and religion? You think that's the most important thing, that you are living your life right, that you are pleasing God, and that you know where you're going when you die? That's, to me, the most important thing that I want to have truth in, and they want to tell you there is no truth. Why do we say that's true for you but not for me when we're talking about morality or religion? But we never think of such nonsense when we're talking to a stockbroker about our money or a doctor about our health. Can you imagine? We went to, during COVID, we're locked down. We got to get this stuff taken care of. We went to a financial guy. We did a will. We did insurance, and we did investments, you know. And could you imagine if the guy said, well, I don't know what's true in the financial world. What's true for me may not be true for you, and I don't do whatever you want, and it's all good. And, you know, I'd pack it up and leave. I want somebody that can tell me the truth, right, that knows what they're talking about. If they gave me that line, I'd be like out of there. If the doctor said, well, I don't know really, just some people say this, some people say that, I don't really know what's the cure, and you know, it's whatever you want it to be, and you know, we'd be like, I need a new doctor, right? But we want truth in those areas. Why not in morality? Rejection of religious and moral truth is often on volitional rather than intellectual grounds. We just don't want to be held accountable to any moral standards. And that's really why people do that, and you're seeing it more and more, because we want to live how we want. We don't want anybody telling us what's right and wrong. They want to just do what they want, and that's their validation is there's no truth. We just can't know. How can you know that's wrong? We blindly accept self-defeating truth claims that truth does not exist. Everything is relative. There are no absolutes. It's all a matter of opinion. You ought not judge. Religion is about faith, not facts. Who's heard anybody say some of those things? Yeah, I've heard somebody say that. You know, they're a very smart person. I heard say there are no absolutes. And the person I mentioned this called them out that they were talking with, said, are you absolutely sure about that? We're going to look at some of these arguments. Augustine was right when he said, we love the truth when it enlightens, this is a blank, enlightens us, but we hate it when it convicts us. We are in the information age. We have all this information at our fingertips, but we don't want to hear anything that convicts us. You look at anybody that puts anything out that, you know, that talks about abortion, that says abortion is wrong, or any of these things. They don't want to hear it. Some people, they have a YouTube channel and they have a thing on abortion, and people they just walk by, they get so angry and they start throwing things at them and yelling at them, and people street preaching or any of these areas, people don't want to hear it. Oh, we want all this knowledge, we want all Google, and we got all this at our fingertips, but as soon as it convicts us, we shut it down. We do not want to hear it. So the blanks are that we love truth when it enlightens us, but we hate it when it convicts us. So we need to address 4 questions regarding truth. The first one is, what is truth? What is truth? Number 2 is, can truth be known? Tell me if I'm going too fast here. Number 3 is, can truths about God be known? And the last one is number 4, so what? Who cares about the truth? Everybody have that? Truth, known, God, and cares. So definition of truth, I probably should have put it in your thing. Truth can be defined as that which corresponds to its object or that which describes an actual state of affairs. Contrary to what being taught in public schools, truth is not relative, but it is absolute. There are absolute truths. If something is true, it's true for all people, the next blank, at all times, in all places. All truth claims are absolute, narrow, and exclusive. It's funny, I watch these videos and the conservatives are talking to college students and they ask, is rape wrong? And they're like, well, I think it's wrong. Is it wrong for every culture? Well, some cultures it may be okay. And I'm like, they cannot admit that rape is wrong in every culture for every age, I don't know what culture that thinks that that's okay, but they don't want to admit that there is absolutes. They don't want to admit there's truth. Well, I personally think it's wrong, but somebody else may be okay, and that's okay. Like, is murder wrong? Well, if Hitler wants to murder people, if he thinks it's okay, then, they don't want to admit there's absolutes, even though it's painfully obvious. Norm Geisler, he's one of the authors, debated a religious humanist, Michael Constantine Kalinda, one of the few atheists he debated who actually read his book prior to the debate. When it was his turn to speak, Kalinda held up his book and declared, "These Christians are very narrow-minded people. I read Dr. Geisler's book. Do you know what he believes? He believes that Christianity is true and everything opposed to it is false. These Christians are very narrow-minded people." Well, Kalinda had also written a book which I had read beforehand. It was titled Religion Without God, just sort of like romance without a spouse. When it was my turn to speak, I held up Kalinda's book and declared, "These humanists are very narrow-minded people. I read Dr. Kalinda's book. Do you know what he believes? He believes that humanism is true and everything opposed to it is false. These humanists are very narrow-minded people." Do you see the problem? Don't get in there, oh, you're so narrow-minded. They are just as very narrow-minded. They believe what they believe is right and what everything else is false. The exact same thing they're accusing us of. The audience chuckled. They could see the point. The blank there is humanist truth claims are just as narrow as Christian truth claims. We can't know any truth, but then they want to tell you they've got the truth and you don't. Humanist truth claims are just as narrow as Christian truth claims. For if humanism is true, then anything opposed to humanism is false. Likewise, if Christianity is true, then anything opposed to Christianity is false. I don't get this, you're just narrow-minded and dogmatic. So are they. And there is no truth. Well, they have to believe there's a truth because they've got to support their view, whether it's atheism, humanism, Gnosticism. They believe it's true and they dogmatically believe it, and they believe anything is false. There are many truths about truths, so we're going to look at that. Number one, or the first one is, truth is discovered, not invented. Truth is discovered, not invented. It exists independent of anyone's knowledge of it. So gravity existed prior to Newton. Newton didn't invent gravity, he just discovered it. That truth, that principle was already there. Gravity falls at 9.81 meters per second. It always existed before he discovered that. Okay, he didn't invent that. Truth is discovered, not invented. Truth is transcultural. If something is true, it is true for all people in all places at all times. 2 plus 2 equals 4 for everyone, everywhere, at every time. I know they're trying to make math subjective now and racist. I don't know what's racist about numbers, but I don't know, it's subjective and it can be whatever you think. Well, no, it can't. 2 plus 2 is 4 for eternity. Okay, it's not, well, if one culture believes it's 5, that doesn't make it right. Okay, does everybody, you get what I'm saying? Well, if they believe it, that culture accepts it, then it must be okay. No, that doesn't make it true. Okay, we laugh because it's so easy to understand when you put it in these simple terms, but it's true for every cult, whether they believe it or not. You can deny it, but it still doesn't change it. It's transcultural. Truth is unchanging, even though our beliefs about truth change. When we began to believe the earth was round instead of flat, the truth about the earth didn't change. Only our belief about the earth changed. Does that make sense? It's unchanging, even though our beliefs about truth change. Okay, so we may change about what's right and wrong, but that doesn't change the truth. It was always round. Okay, whether we believed it or not, it was always round. Beliefs cannot change a fact, no matter how sincerely they are told. Someone can sincerely believe the earth is flat, and a lot of people do. That only makes them sincerely what? Wrong, mistaken, okay? Sincerity does not make you right, okay? A lot of sincere people that really believe things and they're basing their life on it.
No matter how what?
No matter how sincerely they are held. Okay, a lot of sincere people believe things that aren't true. Truth is not affected by the attitude of the one professing it. An arrogant person does not make the truth he professes false. A humble person does not make the error he professes true. That's because somebody's a nice person, just because it doesn't mean what they believe is true. Because somebody's a jerk, you may not like to hear it, but it doesn't mean it's not, what he's saying isn't true, okay? It's not based on attitude. All truths are absolute truths. Next blank. Even truths that appear to be relative are really absolute. If I say this statement, I, John Bitner, feel cold today on this date, it may appear to be a relative truth, but it is absolutely true for everyone everywhere that John Bitner had felt a sensation of cold on that day. Now, we can argue whether everybody else feels cold or how you feel, or if you think it's warm, whatever, that's your opinion, but it's a truth. It seems relative, but it's absolute that I felt that way on that day. Okay? All truths are absolute. Even truths that appear to be relative are really absolute. So we're going to look at some statements, how to identify and refute self-defeating statements. A self-defeating statement in the blank there, self-defeating statement is one that fails to meet its own standard. And it will amaze you that people base their whole worldview on self-defeating statements. I'm like, that's how much you've thought this through. Your whole life worldview is based on this statement that doesn't even make sense. The statement, there is no truth, claims to be true and thus defeats itself, right? How do you know that's true? It's a simple argument to that. Like your whole view is there are no truths, and that statement is just defeats itself. It's suicidal. It turns back on itself. It defeats itself. Self-defeating statements are made routinely in our postmodern culture, and you need to be able to detect them. Okay, so some of you get in a debate and somebody says, there are no truths. Well, how can you know? There are no truths. Well, they just did a self-defeating statement. How do you know that's true? They say there are no absolutes. What do you say? Are you absolutely sure there's no absolutes? How can you be sure? You've heard people say all truth is relative. There are no absolutes. And think about this. Parents are literally paying thousands of dollars in college tuition so that their children can be taught that the truth, that there is no truth. Think about that. How much is college tuition now? 20, 30, 40 grand, Angela? What is it?
That's a lot.
It's a lot, okay? So you're getting paid, you're paying them a lot for them to tell you you can't know anything, for there is no truth. Like, okay, well, that's a waste of money, isn't it? Okay, if you really, and why do they say that? They really don't believe it. Okay, they really don't believe it. Other self-defeating assertions such as all truth is relative, the answer to that is that a relative truth? There are no absolutes. Are you absolutely sure? And it's true for you but not for me. You can say, is that statement true for you or is it true for everyone? Okay, do you see how these simple, like their whole worldview is based on these things, and it's like, you just get a little pin and it's just a little balloon and it just pops at the slightest little prick there. Okay, so just some ways to answer people. If there is no truth, then why should we learn anything? Why should any student listen to the professor? They're really defeating themselves when they make those claims like, so you're going to teach all these classes and tell me that you don't know any truth, there is no truth? Like obviously you believe something you're saying is true, right? Okay, you believe that, why are you in college? Why are we taking all these classes if there is no truth? They really don't believe that. After all, the professor doesn't have any truth. It's kind of like parents that shoot down authority. And I'm like, you're really shooting down yourself, When you say there's no truth, then they're going to doubt everything you say, right? The professor. If you say all authority is bad, well, then they're going to look at you and say, well, why should I listen to you? They're really shooting yourself in the foot when they say that, but they do say that. So what's the point of going to school, much less paying for it? What's the point of obeying the professor's prohibitions against cheating on tests or plagiarizing papers? Why is it wrong? There is no moral right and wrong. Just because you say it's wrong, that's your truth, that it's wrong? Well, my truth is it's okay. Okay? Obviously a view shared by some politicians we have that got caught recently, and some leaders of universities plagiarizing. Okay, what a hypocrisy! You'll get kicked out of the university for plagiarizing, and then the head of the college, Harvard, and got caught plagiarizing, and it's not that bad now. I'm like, okay, what a hypocrite. False ideas about truth lead to false ideas about life. In many cases, these false ideas give apparent justification for what is really immoral behavior. For if you can kill the concept of the blank here is truth, you can kill the concept of any true religion or any true morality. That's really their goal. They don't really believe it. They believe everything they're saying is true, or they wouldn't be teaching it, right? Why would you get up there and teach something you don't believe is true? They believe it's true, but they just want to, religion and any true morality. So the blanks are truth, religion, and morality. Morality. They just want to kill that concept of, that's their goal, okay? They want to kill the concept of true religion, true morality. And we've all seen the results of that, okay? Is it getting better in this country? It's getting worse, okay? The FBI released a statement, and they said violent crime was down 2%, I think it was. But then during the debate, Trump said, crime's up, and then they fact-checked him. Then they found out the FBI stealth changed it and said it's actually got 4% worse. So I don't know how they messed that up, but conveniently they just, it actually is worse, But 4% worse, not 2% better. So yes, we're getting worse and worse. There's a moral decay, moral decline that we're seeing in this country. So truth exists. Important to realize truth exists. It cannot be denied. Those who deny the truth make the self-defeating truth claim that there is no truth. So we have to it's very easily to understand there is truth. If you say there is no truth, you're making a truth statement, okay, a self-defeating statement. I want to read this. It's a soul-winning experience by the author. I appreciate the author and the apologetics, but also real-life application, knocking on doors and getting people saved. So knock, knock. Who's there? A man came to the door. It wasn't a joke. But I stuck out my hand and said, "Hi, my name is Norm Geisler. This is my partner, Ron. We're from the church at the end of the street." "I'm Don," the man replied, his eyes quickly sizing us up. Immediately, I jumped into action with question 1. "Don, do you mind if we ask you a spiritual question?" "No, go ahead," Don said boldly, apparently eager to have a Bible thumper for dessert. I laid question 2 on him. "Don, if you were to die tonight and stand before God, and God were to ask, why should I let him into heaven, what would you say? Don snapped back, I'd say to God, why shouldn't you let me into heaven? Gulp, he wasn't supposed to say that. I mean, the answer wasn't in the book. After a split second of panic, I offered up a quick prayer and replied, Don, if we knocked on your door seeking to come into your house, and you said to us, why should I let you into my house? And we responded, why shouldn't you let us in? What would you say? Don pointed his finger at my chest and sternly replied, I would tell you where to go. I immediately shot back, that's exactly what God is going to do to you. Don looked stunned for a second, then narrowed his eyes and said, to tell you the truth, I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist. You're an atheist. That's right. Well, are you absolutely sure there is no God? Okay, great question. If somebody says they're an atheist, are you absolutely sure there is no God? I asked. He paused and then said, well, no, I'm not absolutely sure. I guess it's possible there might be a God. Okay, because how can anybody say, I know 100% there is no God? You know, there's no way they can claim that. So you're not really an atheist then, you're agnostic, I informed him, because an atheist says, I know there is no God, and an agnostic says, I don't know whether there is a God. Yeah, all right, so I guess I'm agnostic then, he admitted. Now this was real progress. With just one question, we moved from atheism to agnosticism. I still had to figure out what kind of agnostic Don was. So I asked him, Don, what kind of agnostic are you? He laughed as he said, what do you mean? He was probably thinking, a minute ago I was an atheist. I have no idea what kind of agnostic I am now. Well, Don, there are two kinds of agnostics, I explained. There's the ordinary agnostic who says he doesn't know anything for sure. And then there's the ordinary agnostic who says he can't know anything for sure. Don was sure about this. He said, I'm the ordinary kind. You can't know anything for sure. What's wrong with that? How do you know that for sure? Do you see people say this stuff and don't even think? You got to call them out. Recognizing the self-defeating nature of his claim, I asked him, Don, if you say that you can't know anything for sure, then how do you know that for sure? Looking puzzled, he said, what do you mean? Explaining it another way, I said, how do you know for sure that you can't know anything for sure? Okay, do you see that? I could see the light bulb coming on, but decided to add one more point. Besides, Don, you can't be a skeptic about everything because that would mean you'd have to doubt skepticism. But the more you doubt skepticism, the more sure you become. Everybody get that? It's a little, I'll read it one more time. Besides, John, you can't be a skeptic about everything. The more you have, that would mean you'd have to doubt skepticism, but the more you doubt skepticism, the more sure you become. He relented. Okay, I guess I really can know something for sure. I must be an ordinary agnostic. Now we were really getting somewhere. With just a few questions, Don had moved from atheism through ordinary agnosticism to ordinary agnosticism. I continued, since you admit now that you can know, why don't you know that God exists? Shrugging his shoulders, he said, because nobody has shown me any evidence, I guess. And this is the key. You think about this. What have they done in high schools and colleges? They've shut out any possible, you can't even mention God, you can't even mention creationism, intelligent design. If you will get kicked out of the campus, you will lose tenure, you will be destroyed if you even mention these. There's a couple documentaries I could point you to that show this. So that's why they don't want people to know the truth. They proposed in one state, well, why don't we do both? Why don't we give them, atheism and creationism? Why don't we teach them both? Well, they didn't want that. Why? They don't want people to know the evidence on the other side. They're afraid of it. So they want to shut it down. That's how you tell somebody doesn't have a good argument, is when they want to shut the other side down. Okay? That's what we're seeing in this society. I don't have a good argument, so I want to shut you down. I want to censor you. And it's all misinformation and hate speech, and we're going to use that because we don't want to have a debate. And that's what's going on in this country. I'm digressing here. Now I launched the million-dollar question, would you be willing to look at some evidence? Sure, he replied. This is the best type of person to talk to, someone who is willing to take an honest look at the evidence. Being willing is essential. Evidence cannot convince the unwilling. Understand that. You're going to meet people that have mind made up, no matter how many great and reasonable arguments you give, they just don't want to. They're unwilling. Since Don was willing, we gave him a book by Frank Morrison titled Who Moved the Stone? Morrison was a skeptic who set out to write a book refuting Christianity, but instead became convinced by the evidence was indeed true. What was the name of the author of I think it was author of Ben-Hur, right? Author of Ben-Hur set out to disprove the Bible and ended up becoming a Christian, and he wrote Ben-Hur. Was that the right one? I can't remember his name. We visited Don a short time later. He described the evidence presented by Morrison as very convincing. Several weeks later, in the middle of study of the Gospel of John, Don accepted Jesus Christ as his personal Lord and Savior. Today, Don is a deacon in a Baptist church near St. Louis, Missouri. Every Sunday morning for years, he's driven the church bus through the local neighborhood to pick up those kids whose parents couldn't come to church. His ministry has special meaning to me, Norm, because two men like Don picked me up with a church bus more than 400 times. Every Sunday from when I was 9 until I was 17, I was in a position to accept Christ at 17 largely because of the bus ministry. I guess it's true what they say, what goes around comes around, even if it's just a Sunday school bus. I thought that was a pretty cool story on several levels, and I'll leave it there so we know. If anybody says, well, we can't know truth, there are no absolutes, there is no truth, you have the answer. That's a self-defeating statement. You just got to recognize it and call it out. We're going to look at this more, but truth exists. There is truth, there are absolutes, and we can know them. And just some things. I just want to recap. I thought that was interesting about truth. If I could find it here. I will find it. Truth is discovered, not invented. Truth is transcultural. Something is true. It's true for all people in all places at all times. Truth is unchanging, even though our beliefs about truth change. Beliefs cannot change a fact, no matter how sincerely they are held. Truth is not affected by attitude of the one professing it, and all truths are absolute truths. So just some important things. We're starting if you're new, we're starting at the very beginning. Okay, you're gonna, meet people that are atheists or agnostics or that don't believe in the Bible, and you've got to start from somewhere. If they don't believe in truth, well, you've got to prove to them that there is truth and that you can know that. And you've got to lay a foundation to reach certain people. So let's close. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you, dear Lord. We thank you for your word. We thank you for creating us and loving us and caring about us and giving us an instruction manual on how to live, dear Lord. And just pray that we would follow that and help us to be able to reach lost relatives, dear Lord, that don't believe in you or don't believe in the Bible, and just give us the wisdom and help us look at the evidence for your existence in the Bible. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen.